We have some more breaking news now just into us here at MSNBC. Federal prosecutors have unsealed copies of search warrants for Michael Cohen's personal email account, as well as his Trump.org email account, too. NBC News investigative reporter Tom Winter is joining us on the phone with details. So, Tom, what are we learning from these newly unsealed warrants?
Well, Hallie, we're getting a little bit of a better picture here this morning as far as when Michael Cohen first kind of popped on the special counsel Robert Mueller's radar. And actually, it's more of a better timeline of when they started seeking access to his email accounts, including that Trump.org.com email address that you referenced there. So we're starting to get a little bit of a better sense of the timeline and also some of the things that investigators were looking at. They were looking at possible bank fraud, and we've discussed that obviously at length over the past year or so, particularly after Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to some of that fraud. They were also looking into whether or not, as part of a know your customer, so banks have to know why you're opening a bank account and what the purposes of opening that bank account is when you're opening a business. And they said that Cohen made some misrepresentations to that bank, saying that he was only going to be doing domestic business, and instead he ended up doing business with a number of foreign companies that we've reported about before, a South Korean aerospace company, a pharmaceutical company, and a company here in the United States that's controlled by a Russian oligarch. So those were some of the things that that investigators were looking around at, and they also want to know whether or not Michael Cohen was working on behalf of a foreign government or a foreign agent. A lot of that we knew. What we were hoping here this morning, Hallie, was to find out what got Michael Cohen onto investigators' radar in the first place. And unfortunately, with 3.5 pages redacted here in these documents, Hallie, that's something that is still a little bit shrouded in mystery.
Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. Why don't you subscribe? It's really easy. Just click on that button down there. And for more news from MSNBC, click on any of these videos here for the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more videos from MSNBC with our newsletters. Head over to msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up.